let's get started if we could. Uh, First of all, if you've looked at the leader sheet, I don't know why in the world you'd want to listen to me.
Could be worse.
But anyway, I will tell you about what is my favorite technique to fish. I didn't bring anything to show you because if you've been fishing any time at all, bass fishing at any length of time at all, you already know what the Texas rig is and how to rig it, how to do it. But what I will tell you a little bit about, in preparation for tonight, I intended to tell you some history about the Texas rig itself. I didn't find anything other than the fact that that technique was developed in order to fish the plastic worm, and that should come as no surprise to you. What I did learn is that when the plastic worm was actually invented and how. I think most of us know that Nick Cream was the guy that invented the plastic worm. He called them a rubber worm, and he invented them in his kitchen in Ohio in 1949, believe it or not. I did not realize that that bait was that old. But thereafter, the technique for the Texas rig was developed to use his lure, and presumably it was developed in Texas. So I think we can safely say that. From a personal standpoint, it is absolutely my favorite way to fish. As a real young boy, about Ezra's age, is when I first found out about them, and we were using the man's jelly worm, and you know the color. There were several colors to choose from, all of them purple. Okay. And I did not even know how to use a bait casting reel. We were fishing out of a 14-foot aluminum boat, my dad and I, in a 9.5 Johnson, and he would sit on the front scull, and I'd run the outboard if we needed to, and I just used a pencil sharpener, you know, Zebco thing, and I didn't know anything about sinker selection or any of that. You just thread a bullet weight on, tie on a hook, didn't even know what kind of knot I was tying, thread your worm on, break off a piece of toothpick through the hook eye to keep it from sliding down, and go to Henderson and throw it on a point. We chunk it out there and just sit and wait. If you felt the fish on, we counted to 10 before we set the hook, because we wanted to make sure that he had it, you know. And then we'd reel it in and rip the hook out of his gullet and throw him in the ice chest. So. Yeah.
So like Randy, you had a lot of deep hooks.
That's right, yeah. Turn them inside out. But since then, of course, I still love fishing a Texas rig. It is a confidence piece of deal for me. And anything else, if I'm fishing it like top water or spinner, they got to get on it pretty quick or I'm going to drop it and pick up the Texas rig. So my favorite equipment to use is a 6.5-foot medium heavy action Loomis rod. And I have a deep affection for Loomis rods. I do not have a deep affection for their cost. But my favorite one, and the one I've used for 2.5 decades easily, was a rod I won as a door prize at the Ullman's Bass Classic. I don't remember what year, but the vendor had his phone number on it, and the area code for Lafayette was 318, okay? And I still have that rod, and I still use it. Don Olivier just changed the tip on it for me, so. And I have that rod rigged with a 4600, Ambassador 4600 C3. It's considerably newer than the rod itself, but I've been through a couple of reels on that particular rod. But as in mostly in fishing, I mean, the important part is the sensitivity of the rod and being able to feel the fish when they pick it up. I almost exclusively use 15-pound Berkeley big game spooled on it. Hook choice, I've changed a lot. For a long time, I used the true turn hooks, and I'd hand sharpen them and all of that, and I really liked them. But it was in the CFBA that I was introduced to owner hooks, and I use almost exclusively an owner 3/0 rigging hook, a short shank with a big one cap on it. Rarely lose a fish once he's stuck. You know, those things have the kind of like a broad point arrow, and they cut well, and I find it personally that works very well for me. Some folks like to put a plastic bead on after they thread on the slip sinker. It's probably a good idea. It could be a knot saver, if you will. And they like to click, click, click. I don't do it because, honestly, I would say that approximately 90% of the bites that I get are on the initial drop anyway. So the bead's not really doing me any good at that point. Slip sinker size, it's usually one of two, and it kind of depends on water depth, but anything that, you know, like in the basin or somewhere where we're fishing reasonably shallow water, slip sinker weight of choice is 3/16. I'll occasionally downsize to an 1/8 ounce. I have been known, if I'm going to only cast thing, to go to a 16th. You know, and as I'm sure you know, the smaller, lighter sinker, the better. I still use the lead sinkers. I really don't. I'm not into the high-end stuff that's expensive. Because I break off so much, you know, I hate to lose $2 in the sink. I find, though, that the 3/16 in water 10 feet deep or less affords me the opportunity to cast to specific targets or to pitch, which is 80% of the fishing that I do is pitching the bait. Close in, tight to cover, chunk it in, try to get into heavy cover as best you can, or visible structure, that sort of thing. If I'm at Toledo Bend and I'm going to be like this past weekend, which was absolutely awful for me, fishing emergent grass off into deeper water, I'll go to a 1/4 ounce, rarely larger than that, and it affords a nice slow fall into water that's, you know, 15 to 25 feet deep. I will say I will almost never peg the sinker. It has to be really a specific set of conditions to me to consider pegging it, which is heavy grass, and I'm gonna, not quite punching, but I mean, if you're gonna fight the sinker and all of that, it pays to maybe peg it. But if I don't have to peg it, I'm not gonna, because I like, a lot of times I like it to separate and drop. As I said, most of the strikes that I detect anyway, I maybe get some I don't, but are on the initial drop. You see a piece of cover, like if that post right there is a stump with, you know, in 3 feet of water, pitch to it to the left side. The initial drop typically is when I'll get the bite. You either can feel it, of course, or you see the line jump or move and that sort of thing. If I don't get hit on the drop, I bounce that thing up and down 3 or 4 times, boom, 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 make that bait hop. If I don't get anything, I don't leave it. Spool up, throw to the front, same deal. Spool up, throw to the right side, boom. And it's interesting, you're not moving that bait but maybe that far, but you may get bit that third pitch to that thing, and then feel like you've really accomplished something. That's about all I can really tell you about Texas rig fishing. The baits of choice is usually, typically, one of 3 things. At springtime, I like to fish a lizard with it, or a crawl worm. By the time May arrives, the lizards go down. Stay with the crawl worm or a 7-inch bandit style worm, you know, the ribbon tail, that sort of thing. I had a great affection for the ring rascal brand, and not easy to find, although Don Olivier tells me he's got thousands of them somewhere and he refuses to go get them and sell them to me, which, if you got a way to make him sell me those baits, I'd welcome the help. Color choice And it's, I've reduced it down to just a handful of color choices, and I choose based on light conditions and water clarity. Bright sky, clear water, watermelon red. Bright sky, stained water, June bug, or the opposite. Cloudy weather, clear water, June bug. I will go to also a kind of a crab apple color, red bug type color is also an excellent choice for most any light or water conditions. Obviously, if you fish locally in the basin, red shad is a must. And then we'll use, and these are worm colors typically, in crawworm colors. Black cherry is always a good choice. On the lizards, black with a blue tail, or a watermelon red, or kind of a pumpkin seed color is what I'll choose. So. I don't think I've left anything out. I'd welcome questions. I probably can't answer them. But.
What's your biggest fish you ever caught on Texas rig?
6'4". No, that's not true. 7'4". And actually it was on it was an interesting situation. We was fishing in the Texas Oilman's Bass Invitational, and really windy on Toledo, and we were hiding behind an island. The first day we had just a St. Valentine's Day massacre when we slaughtered them. Second day, same conditions. We really didn't get bit very well. I caught one fish that day. It was 7'4", and it came on a watermelon red French fry, centipede. And there was kind of a desperation deal because we've been catching fish on Cincos and all of that. And like I said, I'm not getting the Cinco bite. I'm throwing it for 3 or 4 hours, and I just go to my favorite. If I'm not going to catch fish, at least I'm not going to catch them on my favorite. And pitch that thing to, it's like fishing the basin. Cypress tree sitting out here on a point where you can almost see the bottom. Pitch it to the base, 1, 2 hops, boom. So, I hadn't caught very many big fish, but that probably surprises no one. David.
Toledo tackle in Lakeshore has an off-name worm that's almost identical to the ring rascal.
Is that right?
At the red with the black. They did. The last 22 packs are now sold.
And what would you like for it? I got my wallet on me. V&M, I found, makes something close that was Cyclone Baits or Bayou Outdoors, up there in Natchitoches. They're making a ring, what they call a ringer. The tail's a little bit different, and I don't know that it's 7 inch, it's a 6-inch worm. I think I could live with that. And in fact, the only fish I caught last month at Miette Point was on one of those ringer worms that I had picked up, and it was 2.3 weight, I think, decent fish, particularly for the basin, so I was happy about that.
Before the Texas rig, did you ever fish with a split shot ahead of a worm? That's the way we do it before the Texas rig. And you throw it out there, and you watch your line, and then it starts moving. Like we say, you just wait and wait. Sometimes it comes in the boat. But with a split shot about this far ahead of a cream worm or whatever.
That's a really, it's a great question, and this is how I'll answer it. No, I never fished with it before the Texas rig, but I fished a rig like that in recent years at Toledo Bend and elsewhere in the spring when they're you're fishing a Carolina rig type thing, which is except they wouldn't eat the Carolina rig with the big sinker and all that. So the guy I was fishing the tournament with said, "Man, I've been catching fish doing this," and he did exactly what you said. A foot maybe, or 18 inches, no more, up the line, pinch one little split shot on it with a lizard or a Cinco, and like that, and we smacked them. Yeah, it's a great technique to use. I worried a little bit about pinching my line with a slip sinker, but I guess that's just a risk you got to take, Yeah, I have trouble casting it if it's too light, a light sinker. And if you, and then, you know, pegging it would help a bunch. That'd be a situation where you'd want to peg it.
Peggy weight, right.
Yeah, because typically on a Carolina rig, if I'm using you know, half-ounce sinker or something, I don't even bother to peg, because it just goes. But a light thing, where you got all this line and everything hanging off, that'd be a good thing to do, to peg it with it. Probably work really well. Anything else?
I need to get a worm in a swimming pool and look at what it does.
The worm problem is easy to solve, the swimming pool part is. Still working on that. Better go to Al's. Stay
I
up
don't
on the ladder.
understand what actually goes on. Does it curl up and does the tail float up and? Depends on what, right?
So, yeah, they have some worms that don't float, some that do, some heavier than others, and how do you choose?
You get the personal secrets there, bud.
Yeah.
I choose them based on color and length and tail action more than on weight or anything. Zoom is making a worm that has some little bitty ribs, and the tail is they call it a speed worm. It's got the same little tail like a speed crawl. And Gino taught me that at Patterson a couple of years ago when we were fishing together, and you caught some fish on that, and you gave me a pack, or I shared yours, and we did decent enough to where I wouldn't spend a bunch of money on it. And you know, that little tail is really attractive to goggle eye. They'll bite the end of that off and no problem. So. Anything else? All right, fellas, thanks for listening.